wonderful YouTubers. Welcome to my blog. This is Tiger Rose Rides. This is my 10th blog, which surprised me. I wasn't expecting it to go on that long, but I'm really enjoying it, so I hope you do too. Ooh, bit of a gutter there. You currently see me going through Fareham, the east end of Fareham. I'm coming out on the A32. I'm going up to Loomies. Now I know I've taken you up there before, but the last time it actually escaped my memory to actually take you to Loomies, and I cut you off before. So we'll get you there and give you a view of Loomies itself. I'm sure many of you that live down this way and the bike riders will know it already. For me, this is just a ride, go and get a nice cup of coffee, but also to get footage for this video. What have I been up to this week? Not a lot, to be honest with you. The weather has been absolutely atrocious. You all know about Storm Bert, I think his name was. It affected us down south as much as anyone else. Today is a nice day, but it promises to be a bit worse tomorrow. So I'm using today to get some footage. I did go out on Saturday, Sunday, and my goodness, that was cold. Very, very cold. I'm trying out these new gloves, and yeah, they didn't not quite cut the mustard. The fingertips were quite cold. The rest of my hand was warm, but just the fingertips quite cold. But that's okay. I do have another set of gloves in my bag at the back here on the back rack that are proper winter gloves, so just in case. But today is a lot milder than it was on Sunday. I think it's about 11-12 degrees, so I shouldn't have any problems. In fact, I'm quite cozy. So what do I want to talk about to you? Not a lot, to be honest, because as this is my first bike and I've only been riding since the 10th of September really, I don't have the experience or the knowledge to do what the other bloggers do, such as Bingley Wheeler, Stuart Fillingham, and you know, the all-year motorcyclists, and all the others that I could name. You know, they've got the expertise, they've been riding for a long time. I've only been riding for a short time, so I don't have that experience. All I can tell you about is this bike, my own personal bike. You know, this, as you all know, it's the Royal Enfield Classic 350, and above all, I can tell you that I am absolutely loving it. It really is a most superb bike. Comparison to others, I couldn't tell you. I really couldn't tell you, but it does exactly what it says on the tin. For me, this is the kind of roads and the back roads and smaller roads and everything else that I want to go through, and this bike does it absolutely perfectly. The fastest I can go around here by law is 60 miles an hour on some roads. Most of them are maximum of 50, and this bike does it with ease. So I absolutely love it, and most of you already know that I dedicated this to my grandfather, because it's in the what can I put it? It's in the style of the World War II messenger bikes. And although my grandfather wasn't actually a messenger, I do slightly remember him telling me that one day he found a bike that had the keys in it, and he just had to give it a go. So, you know, that's my granddad all over, basically. So yes, this bike, love it. It's perfect. It hasn't given me any trouble. I've done a fair few mods to it, as you probably know. The most recent ones being the DNA filter and the decap pipe, which made a huge difference to pull-in power. I can take on hills with a lot more confidence now, and yeah, absolutely loving it. So that's enough of that. What am I going to do this week? What's the history and the motorbike history? Well, the local history is going to be about the Gosport Ferry. Lots of memories for me on the Gosport Ferry. and to my grandmother, who's obviously not around anymore, but I'll tell you the story when we get into that. And the bike history, at the moment I'm still researching it and I'm still doing what's needed, but I'm trying to find a 60 gear, there wasn't one. But Hazelwood Motorbikes, it's quite short-lived, 1911 to 1923, for motorbike manufacturing. So it may be short, but let's see what I can find tonight when I sit down and really go for it. And hopefully it will be a decent history of a bike that, to be honest with you, until I looked at it, I knew nothing about. Oh, roadkill. Yeah. Meaty. So what I'm going to do is, as I normally do, I'm going to go a bit silent and let you enjoy the ride with me, and I'll also put in some history and motorbike history. Enjoy. As I said earlier, this week's history is going to be about the Gosport Ferry. It's a part of Gosport that I can recall right back to my very early childhood. And back in those days, about 65 years ago, the ferry was very different to what it is now. And I would say was much more dangerous. To the point where my grandmother had the bragging rights of being able to say that she was one of the very few people that had been injured by the ferry. My mum told me that this happened when it was moored on the Gosport side jetty, but it was quite a rough day, and that she stepped off the boat as it came away from the side, and her leg went down between the boat and the jetty. Thankfully, one of the ferrymen grabbed her and stopped her falling in the water, but in the meantime the boat had then gone back to the jetty and crushed her leg and broken it. And so my gran was injured by the ferry. Not many people can say that. When I was a kid with my sisters, you kind of used it as a playground almost. In those days, back in the 60s, there was a downstairs, like down in the bow of the boat, where there was benches and seats and things. And we used to pay to go across, and it was always a return ticket, so you pay to go across. And then when it got to the other side, we would hide down there underneath the benches so no one could see us. And the ferryman always took a look. But obviously they couldn't see us because we were hid in the corners, we were hid under the benches and everything. And then we kept doing that. Every time it stopped, we just kept going backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. It was great fun for us. It was a pain in the backside for the ferrymen, but great fun for us. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get on with the history. Portsmouth has always had a very rich history and has always been the hub of commerce and industrialisation. Many people from Gosport, going back hundreds of years, have had to find a way of getting to work across the water, or take the long journey around via Fareham and Porchester to get there. And in the early days that would have meant a horse and carriage, so not very practical. The other option was to row across. Those that could would row themselves and probably some friends in the boat across, and industrious people did it as a business. Little double-ended rowboats called wherries dodged big sail ships with 4 or more passengers trying to earn a few shillings. Before the 16th century, Gosport was very much a small fishing village of no real significance. But when Henry VIII came into the throne, Portsmouth started to develop as a naval base and dockyard. Many of these dockyard and naval men lived in Gosport, and inevitably the population grew. In 1603, the ferry service was regulated by an order from the Court of Exchequer, that's easy for me to say, and they gave it the right to operate a public ferry service exclusively to the inhabitants of the borough of Gosport. And so, in 1883, and for some reason, the Portsmouth Harbour Ferry Company was formed and became one of the longest running ferry services in the UK. Right up to 1988, Gosport Ferry became part of the company, and its fleet grew from the double-ended rowing boats in 1809 to become the service that even now can take several hundred at a time back and forth, in comfortable and convenient ferry crossing from the Gosport to Portsmouth route and back. The invention of steam propulsion on boats in the mid-19th century saw the ferry service change dramatically, and in the days of all passengers and goods being transported across the harbour by wherries, took a heavy loss of passengers. Instead, they went in relative comfort and safety. But in 1840, a chain ferry of Floating Bridge arrived on the scene, at 100 feet long and 60 feet wide, with 2 steam engines driving heavy oak cogs which engaged on iron chains laid across the harbour. It transported carriages, carts, horses and even cattle, as well as foot passengers, crossing the harbour to and from Old Portsmouth every 15 minutes for 14 hours a day, and became very popular. In 1841, the railway came to Gosport, and harbour traffic greatly increased as travellers from Portsmouth crossed to get to the new station. The response of the Gosport watermen to the introduction of the floating bridge was to invest more in steam launches. These boats quickly became popular, and by 1870 had recaptured a great deal of the cross-harbour passenger traffic lost to the floating bridge. The Floating Bridge Company then invested in steam launches of its own for foot passengers, completing with the Floating Bridge service. These were also an instant success, and the Floating Bridge Company was once again making healthy profits at the expense of the watermen. In 1875, a group of Gosport watermen realised that as individuals they could not hope to compete with the steam launches of a well-organised company, so decided to pool their resources to provide a regular and reliable service to match the schedules of the Floating Bridge Company. They formed the Gosport and Portsea Watermen's Steam Launch Company, and acquiring their first 4 launches from individual watermen in return for shares in the company. 1876 saw the rail service to London be extended from the Portsmouth and Southsea terminal to the new station alongside the Hard at Portsmouth Harbour. Furthermore, the Act of Parliament which allowed this extension required that a free public landing stage be provided along the station. This was an immediate boon for the Gosport watermen. They could now run their launches right up to the railway station, giving their passengers access to the new direct train service to London. In 1883, the success of the Gosport and Portsmouth Watermen's Steam Launch Company persuaded others to follow suit, and in 1883 a rival company was formed called the Port of Portsmouth Steam Launch and Towing Company. These became known as the Old Company and the New Company respectively. Rivalry between the two companies during the early years was keen. There were many stories of bumping and boring to rival boats in their attempts to carry most passengers to and fro Portsmouth. Such a state of affairs could not last long, and in 1888 an understanding was reached whereby a launch of one company would leave each terminal simultaneously at the sound of a bell. Immediately after their departure, tickets would be issued for launches of the other company until the departure. Eventually an arrangement was made and the ferry takings to be pooled and shared between the companies. By the turn of the century, Portsmouth had become less important, and as a result, the foot passenger trade of the floating bridge was beginning to suffer. The old and new ferry companies had their landing at Portsmouth Hard, close to the dockyard, where the naval base and railway station and the hub of the trams and bus network serving all areas of the city were. By 1950, the floating bridges were showing their age. Their service was faltering, and with petrol no longer being rationed, many users started taking the longer road routes. By 1959, revenues fell so much and repair bills kept mounting that the floating bridge eventually ceased. These days, the last of the floating bridges can be seen anchored behind the Gosport side ferry jetty. In 1961, the two companies, after several years of talking about the idea, agreed to amalgamate. The new company changing its name to the Portsmouth Harbour Ferry Company, and after taking over the old company in 2004, the Portsmouth Harbour Company again was taken over by the Falkland Islands Holdings plc, which remains a range of properties, retailing establishment and shipping businesses. and now the Gosport Ferry has new boats and is thriving. The service is known as the most expensive ferry service in the world. At £5.10 for a return ticket, just to travel approximately 500 metres each way, is a bit expensive, but you are paying for the convenience and the time saving, because trust me, it can take a long time to get into Portsmouth. Those of you who use the ferry, I hope this has possibly brought back some good memories and fond memories for you. For those of you that are new to the ferry, I hope this has been a bit of an education for you. So that's it for this week's local history. This week I'm doing a rather short history on the Chater-Lea company, who throughout the life of their producing machines produced bicycles, cars and eventually motorbikes. Although they made bicycles and cars, I want to concentrate on the motorbike side of the business. It was because of the bicycle frames that they made that the company moved into motorbikes, because they took the frames of the cycles and offered additional engines to add to them. In 1900, the first motorcycles appeared. They were built to order using whatever engine the customer specified. After a few years, they had only one model, a robust in construction that was meant for sidecar use. It had a 6 horsepower Jap engine, a 2-speed gearbox, all chain drive and leading link front forks. They then produced a 2.5 horsepower Solo with a Jap engine and a belt drive. By 1909 they were using a 3-speed gearbox and a crankshaft mounted clutch on the sidecar unit outfit. Then an alternative V-twin appeared, plus various Solos. Between 1913 and 1916 they reverted to one model for a while, which was an 8 horsepower twin with sidecar. They then added a 369cc 2-stroke with 2-speed gearbox and a belt final drive. During World War I, production stopped, but development and testing continued alongside the war effort. Then in 1920, after the Great War, the company returned to the market with only a 2-stroke. In 1921, a 976cc Jap V-twin model was added to the catalogue, and in 1922 they produced a 488cc single-valve single of their own design. In 1923, more models were added that year, and in 1924 their own model was enlarged to 545cc, and they produced other models with single-valve and overhead valve Blackburn engines. It was the last year for the big V-twin, and they started fitting saddle tanks to their models. They made a name at Brooklands when records were broken by Dougal Merchant riding a machine with a modified Blackburn engine. This helped sales, but the machines were very expensive. In 1925, only 3 more singles were listed, and in 1926 they unveiled a new 348cc overhead cam model of the face cam type. With vertical shaft drive, there were also 2 sports models with either Blackburn or Jap engines. At 100 miles per hour, it was the world's fastest 350cc machine. Merchant set a world record flying kilometre for 350 and 500cc motorcycles at 102.9 miles per hour. Though the engine was his special and not the later face-cam Chater-Lea engine. In 1927, the only models produced that year used their own Chater-Lea 348cc and 545cc engines. The name changed to Chater-Lea Limited when William, the founder, died in 1927. The business was taken over by his sons, John and Bernard. In 1928, the company moved to Letchworth Garden City in Hertfordshire, and shortly after, in 1929, they added the 247cc lightweight with a Villiers engine and a dirt track model as well. By 1930, only 3 models were in production, and the 2-stroke model was dropped. By 1931, their style now had become somewhat dated, and the only machines built were the camshaft and SV models. So, in 1935, the camshaft model ended, and in 1936, the single-valve model ended as well. The last machine was delivered to the AA, and the firm returned to general engineering. That's it for the Chater-Lea company this week. Next one, I don't know what it's going to be. We'll see when it actually happens. I hope you enjoyed that. let me know if you have a bike in mind that you would like me to cover, and I'll see what I can do. That's it for this week. I will see you next week with another fantastic, thrilling installment. Until then, be safe, ride safe, and take care.